I'm here with Neil Donnelly. Now, we was discussing Neil Donnelly's peach Fett find last month. I must say, I think between the five of us, we're coming across a bit sceptical. Neil's reached out and said that he'd like to talk about the peach Fett. I must say, since chatting to Neil, my scepticism has largely gone. But I thought we'd start off just talking to Neil and ask him a little bit about his collecting background. So welcome, Neil. Just let us know just quickly how you got into collecting and do you collect anything in particular?
Yeah, sure. Well, firstly, thanks for having me. Collecting, yes. So I would say that as far as Star Wars goes and vintage Star Wars, I'd probably class myself as a casual collector. I do have a small collection of vintage Star Wars. I have a small collection of modern as well. I've over the years, I much like most of the guys of our age, I sold my childhood collection in the mid-90s when my youngest was born. And I only really started collecting vintage again probably around about 2010, just picking bits up off eBay. And there was, I think it was pretty much all eBay buys at the time, 2010. And I wasn't really trying to complete anything. And that was till I joined Echo in about, I guess we had about 2,000 or 3,000 members at the time. And then I really got the vintage collecting bug again. But alongside that, I suppose I probably focus more on, I don't know whether I guess you still do call it collecting, but I go fossil hunting. So I suppose the collection that gives me most pleasure are fossils and anything that I've found rather than anything I actually buy.
Where are you back? Are you near one of the sort of Chesil Beach?
Somerset. So yeah, I'm not too far from. There's Jurassic outcrops at Hill, Watchet, towards Minehead, that sort of way, and probably only a couple of hours from the Jurassic coast as well. So they're my usual haunts for fossil collecting. But I've been all over the world collecting fossils, and the ones that I found in weird places are probably the ones that mean the most to me. So yeah, I guess my four things that I collect are probably vintage Star Wars, a little bit of modern, fossils, 80s hip hop vinyl, and I've got a collection of Smurfs as well. It's just like
we're kindred spirits there.
Yeah, we are a little bit. Yeah, we just found that out earlier, and there's not many people who still admit to collecting Smurfs, but I've got to admit they do all come from eBay as well. I'm not really active. I know there are Smurf collector groups out there, but I haven't.
I was going to ask. There must be a Facebook group, mustn't there?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there is. I think a lot of them are in Germany and Europe and stuff like that, and I haven't really looked into it that much. I just collect the ones that I knew I had when I was a kid. They generally come up on eBay. So yeah, that's kind of me as a collector. I suppose Star Wars is, I love it. Obviously, I love collecting Star Wars. But yeah, I guess my main focus is really around fossils more so than anything else.
And when you were a kid, so you sold off your Star Wars in the 90s, what did you have then? Did you have loads of figures, loads of ships? Or?
I had all I had everything apart from the last 17, which I'd sort of, by the time the last 17 come out, I pretty much lost interest. I'm not sure if I had every single one of the Ewoks, but I had pretty much a full collection of figures. Play sets, I had the Palatoy Death Star, the Falcon, just the sort of standard stuff. The one thing I didn't have and I always really wanted was the Walker, however you pronounce it, 80.
I'm an AT-AT
man. Yeah, that's what I always wanted. A mate of mine had it. I never got one. That's probably one thing I would like to pick up, is a really nice AT-AT. But so yeah, it was a fairly small collection. I did look after my Death Star though, and I do regret selling that, but we've all done it.
Yeah.
and I'd love to buy another one, but
they're not
they're
cheap
not
now,
cheap.
are they?
No.
I remember seeing one in Doncaster Toy Fair. Probably was about 5 years ago. I think they've gone up 5 times as much since I saw that one. You got to regret. It's like that's just collecting, though, isn't it? You can't keep everything.
Yeah.
And you say that you basically picked up a loose collection again, and then sold. And what do you actually?
So when I did Echo, I mean, I did the classic thing of right. I'm going to buy every figure, and I'm going to complete the run. I got pretty much again to the same point. The last 17 have never really held any kind of sentimental value for me, and I didn't have them as a kid, so I've never really bothered with them. So yeah, I completed 2 loose runs, moved them on again. I started collecting a few carded figures. Tried to do a tri-logo run, then looked at more of some of the more expensive ones. I thought I'm never going to complete this, so. I am a pretty much buy and sell Star Wars vintage stuff. I've never really held on to anything. Nothing's really sort of stuck with me, apart from a couple of Yodas. Yoda's always been my favourite character, so there's a few little, a few loose Yodas which I'll probably keep forever. But yeah, that's and where I'm at now, it is pretty humble collection. Few loose, couple of mailers and stuff like that. But yeah, it's I haven't got a massive collection. So.
Yeah, well, it's a sensible collection, you'd say.
I mean, I always look at other people's collections and think, oh, I'd love that. And ultimately, I know from past experience that I wouldn't hang on to it for very long. It's just one of those things that I mean. There's fossils which I could never let go, and they're probably not worth anything at all. But it's a different kind of feel for me. So
yeah, that makes perfect sense. Now you say so. You were so did you discover Echo Live on Facebook? When was that? Because you were an admin on that, weren't you?
I discovered the Echo Vintage page on Facebook. Yeah. I think that I was probably just searching around for vintage Star Wars groups and. Yeah, that came up. I think there was around about 2,000 to 3,000 members at the time. So, yeah, I mean, that's sort of, I was, really active at the time. I was really enthusiastic. I did a lot, bought a lot, sold a few bits, did some giveaways and stuff like that. And I think, it wasn't very long before they asked me to join the admin team. And I was like, yeah, I jumped at that chance. And yeah, I mean, some of the people that I've met and become friends with, I really consider family now. I guess everyone's got their favourite group and stuff, and everyone's got their little tribe, and I guess Echo's mine, really. So yeah.
And how it's strange because it is a huge group now, and 3,000 people when you joined. It's a big number then. Yeah. As an admin, I'm always interested in this. I'm an admin on Diecast group on Facebook, which must be one of the smallest groups going. Right. We have a post maybe once a month. It's very from an admin perspective. I suspect on Echo, is that fairly full-time job in terms of moderating and
it used to be. It was. Back in those days, there were times when it was like the Wild West. There were a lot of things we were all learning. We still are. We still learn. Whether we should be heavy-handed. Whether we should be heavy-handed or not, or whether we should let the group run itself. And we're still working out. But I think generally now the group is pretty good, and the community is really good at policing itself and looking after itself. We still get, you'll still get complaints every week about this, that, or the other, and it does, it has taken up entire days trying to sort out two people's differences. I've sat out in the garden in the summer and done nothing else other than mediate between two people. And at times you just think, no, I need to step back from this. So we do try it. We all do sort of share the burden, and yeah, the other thing is we all fall out at times as well. It does happen. But generally speaking, we're pretty good now. Yeah.
There's nothing worse than arguing on the internet, and I know I'm speaking from experience, haven't done it myself.
Yeah. Well, we all have, haven't we? We've all done it. We've all learned from it, and I really try my best not to anymore.
Life's too short, isn't it?
Yeah, way too short.
Feel like to dive in, and keeping with Echo. So, do you go to Echo Lives still?
Yeah, I try and get to. I mean, I went to the last one. I probably missed about 2, maybe 3 up until that point. I don't usually get to every one. It's just a case of whether I can at the time, whether I've got any money to buy anything, or whether sometimes it's just a case of just going to meet people and see people. I think I spent about 50 quid the last time I went on a couple of signed items, and there's loads of stuff there that I would love to afford, but a lot of the time is just spent saying hello to people you haven't seen for a while. So yeah.
And do you do other shows as well? Have you been to celebrations or anything like that?
No, I'd like to do Celebration Japan. That's a possibility. That's in 25, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that's a possibility, because we might be moving to Hong Kong in 25. So that would make sense. I'd just like to go and experience it for once. And I mean, I love Japan anyway. I've only been once, but yeah, that would be a good one to go to, I think.
Yeah, I said on the last show that I've decided that that's the target, because I just think we're a family. It's an expensive business, but I thought, right, if we're going to go, I'll leave the older 2 here, or they can pay their own way. That's my plan at the moment. But yeah, I've never been, but fascinated by the culture and love the toys. In fact, I actually watched Godzilla -1 at the weekend.
Yeah.
The new Godzilla film. So it's all Japanese subtitles.
Yeah.
Oh, so wait, in Japanese with British subtitles.
Yeah.
I think it might be my favourite film.
Yeah.
It's absolutely fantastic.
I tell you that, I mean, I'm sort of digressing slightly, but I tell you what I think about the original Godzilla films, and some of the sort of early Japanese stuff. My dad took me to see the original Star Wars. It must have been, I'm guessing it came out in the UK 78. It must have been late 78, might have been early 79. At that time, I didn't know what Star Wars was. The only thing I was interested in was dinosaurs. And at the time, I don't know whether you remember this far back, but you used to get a half-hour movie before the main movie.
I remember something. I remember the cartoons and various things.
Yeah, it was either a cartoon or one of those Japanese sort of monster movies with Godzilla or some giant dinosaur. That's all I can remember. I know my dad and his mate came out and they were like, Star Wars is brilliant stuff. I can't really remember anything about it other than the Godzilla movie, which I saw beforehand. So yeah, I mean, I've always loved sort of Japanese stuff.
Yeah. So maybe see you there.
Yeah, well, it'd be nice. Yeah.
I think there's a few of us thinking of going over, but we've got a bit of time, haven't we?
Yeah, it's working out the cost, isn't it? It's not cheap, but
and because you're into your autographs, would that be a big part of that kind of event?
No, I don't think I'd spend a lot of money on autographs there. I mean, I think it's one of the things I really like about live is that you can go to live, you can pick up a cheap 90s figure, carded figure or box figure or whatever, and then you can go and get it signed by the actor who actually played that character, and you've spent less than 50 quid. And I think that's really great. I don't think I'd go and get one of the really big stars' autographs and end up paying hundreds of pounds. I don't think I would.
You also, so I think it's probably a more rewarding experience at somewhere like Echo as well. You actually get some time with the actor, don't you, to actually have a chat about normal stuff. Well, it's a bit of a conveyor belt. So I've done the Echo style autographs. I haven't got many autographs, but every now and then, more often than not, when someone's got no one with them, I just sort of pop over and have a chat.
Yeah.
Not thinking about it. And if they are nice and I get on with them, I get an autograph at the end.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But I think, the celebration style, it's very much a machine.
Yeah, I can imagine, yeah.
But yeah, good stuff. Well, talking of Hong Kong, I think it's probably time to start talking about the Peach Fett. So this is an amazing story. 2023, a bunch of prototypes found in basically your girlfriend's childhood home.
Yes.
So tell us all about that, Neil.
Yeah. Okay. So I became aware of the figures, like you said, in September 23. So my partner Daisy, she was born in Hong Kong. She's originally from Hong Kong. And most of her early childhood was spent living with her grandmother. Now, I suppose this sort of the story sort of chops around, but basically, in September 23, September of last year, Daisy's grandmother died. So Daisy went back for the funeral, and she was out there for about 3 weeks or so, I think it was. And we'd obviously talked about Star Wars figures in the past because she'd seen my collection. I moved my collection in when we moved in together. And I think it was the day before she was due to fly back. She said, I'm going to my grand's flat with my auntie and uncle just to pick up a keepsake to remember her grandmother by. Do you want me to see if I can find these Star Wars figures that I had when I was a kid? At the time, to be honest, I wasn't in a very good frame of mind and I wasn't that interested. But she went anyway, and that night she started sending the pictures through. So, I mean, I'm not going to plug the website by now. That's not the purpose of me coming on here. But
we mentioned it. We mentioned it last month.
Oh, okay.
Anyway.
Okay.
So
anyway, you can see on the website, she basically sent this picture through of it just looked like a bucket full of crappy beaters, to be honest. I wasn't really that interested at the time, but anyway, she kept sending these pictures through. There was just a few sort of what I thought were standard figures, and then I think it was one of the Fetts with the peach heads came through, and I was like, what the hell's that? Then the Han Bespins started coming through. I was like, were these knockoffs? What are these? I'd not seen them before. I'm not an expert. I hadn't really got into prototype or pre-production sort of figures. Never really paid them that much attention. So anyway, the pictures keep coming through, and there's more than one of these Fetts, and there's 3 Han Bespins, and I don't know really what these are. So I got to do the obligatory name and date picture, and started sharing them in the Echo admin chat. And the first thing the guys were saying, like, "You're taking the piss. These aren't real." I was going, well, I don't know what they are. And anyway, they said, where have they come from? What are they doing? All this sort of thing. So anyway, I think, the sort of chat went on in the Echo admin chat, and I got to thinking, well, I'd probably better do a bit of research on these and see if they are anything. And that's when one of the guys pointed me at Brian Ruckfel's site. I think it's Ruckfel Enterprises. And I saw the Peach Fett, which Daisy had sent a picture of one through. And I was like, no, it can't be one. Because I'd never even heard of the Peach Fett before. I'd sort of heard of the 9 Holy Grails in a row, but I'd never really paid much attention. I was always like, they're rocket firing Fetts, and I'm never going to be able to afford one, and they're lovely and stuff. But So yeah. Anyway, just the chat sort of went on, and then I said to Daisy, well, bring them back. We're going to have to get them looked at by someone who knows what they're doing anyway. So bring them back. She brought all the figures back the next day. They're all stuffed in her hand luggage. And I don't know whether you've ever seen. Have you ever been to Asia or Japan or anywhere like that?
No.
So basically, when you get like fruit, they wrap it in this soft sort of polystyrene mesh, and people often keep it for packaging and stuff. She just bung them all inside these fruit bits of fruit protective packaging and stuffed them in a rucksack. So anyway, she flies back from Hong Kong. I pick her up from Heathrow. We get to, I think, we got to about Reading Services, and she said, "Don't you want to stop and have a look at them?" So we got out of Reading Services, got the figures out, and I think at that point I was like, "Shit, they haven't been tampered with. They're not painted." That I've not seen these before. I don't know what to make of them, sort of thing. So, a couple of the guys in the admin chat introduced me to people that I'd heard of in the community, but I'd never really spoken to. I'm not a big ticket collector. I'm not an inner circle sort of guy. But anyway, we got chatting to a few people. I did a load of pictures the next day. And there was sort of congratulations, was like, this is a major find. And at that point, it was like I had no idea how much they were worth, or we can maybe talk about this a little bit later, but I still don't really. But anyway, the people that had looked at them gave me verbal authentication and said, look, you've got something really special there. Do your research, ask around in the community, show them to people, put them in people's hands, and take it from there. So that was within 2 or 3 days of Daisy being at home. So at this point we said, well, we don't really know how much they're worth, but we better tell your uncle anyway. Because it turns out that he'd bought the figures for Daisy to play with whilst she was at her grand's flat. So
I thought that was a nice.
These figures quickly became figures that he'd bought for her to figures that he'd bought for her to play with. So they were now his again. He's not getting involved in. As far as this family stuff goes, no, I'm staying out of that. But anyway, so the next thing was like, well, where did your uncle get them? And after having talked to a few of the much more knowledgeable guys than me in the community, they said, well, you're going to have to find out. There's going to have to be some kind of provenance to this, and you're going to have some kind of evidence of where they've come from. So our Uncle Alan, he doesn't speak any English, but Daisy obviously speaks Cantonese, so she translated a bunch of questions which I asked to him. And it turns out they basically bought them from like a factory outlet in, I think the district was Simsha Shui or something like that. I can't remember how to pronounce it exactly. But he picked them up as a kid.
And this is in the early 80s?
Yeah. So he was like, I think he was like 16 at the time. And he was basically working for cleaning contractors, cleaning offices in Hong Kong. So he used to pick up these Star Wars figures for Daisy to play with. So we were trying to find out, where was this factory? Where was this factory outlet? And to be honest, it was a bit disappointing because he didn't really remember very much. He bought these. I mean, we were talking 81. And yeah, he didn't really give us a lot. It was a bit like, oh, I was hoping for more. I was hoping for a street name, or I was hoping for, being able to remember where the factory was or something like that. But he remembered the district. He remembered that they were like dirt cheap. They came in little plastic bags with a piece of card inside. And yeah, I mean, he just used to pick them up so Daisy could play with them, because obviously he was, 16 years old, yes, he was still living with Daisy's gran, which was obviously his mum. So that's where we kind of, we got to the point where, well, I mean, is this enough provenance? How do you sort of take this story and convince anyone that it's legitimate? Really difficult. So anyway, I mean, I think the thing that sort of became apparent quite quickly is I took a few of the figures to Echo Live, which was, I think, sort of, I don't know whether it was 7th of October, something like that.
Yeah, I was at that one. So yeah, it was around that time.
Put them in front of a few people, just basically to try and get some kind of feel as to, are these authentic? Are they vintage? And everyone I put them in front of was like, wow, congratulations. Then we started talking to a few people in the community who started making offers. Now, it was pretty clear straight away that Daisy's uncle was going to sell these. He's not interested in them. He's basically said to me, well, can you help me sell them? So yeah, okay, fine. We'll try and do something. And that's kind of where we're at now. That's, I think I don't want to talk too much about, I certainly don't want to talk numbers and stuff like that, but we've had some pretty serious offers on the whole collection and also individually on the Peach Fett itself. Now, my inclination, maybe right, maybe wrong, my inclination to begin with was don't rush into selling the Fett. If you look at the trajectory of rocket firing Fetts and stuff like that, even your standard carded Boba Fetts, they're only going in one direction. So
Maybe new Mandalorian film on the horizon.
I don't know, but I mean, I may be proven wrong, but my advice to him was that don't be in a rush to sell the Fett. There's no real rush. Even if you sit on them for 2 years, just don't take the first offer that comes your way. Mm-hmm. So and he doesn't know anything about vintage Star Wars or toys or the collecting community or anything. So he's been pretty good about it and said, we'll just sort of take your advice for the time being and see what happens. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at with it at the moment.
It is amazing, and when in our ignorance, so you were saying that you were totally unaware of the Peach Fett, and that there is that photo of all the rocket firing Fetts in a row. I'm exactly the same as you. I've seen that photo. I thought, well, that looks interesting, but I've not paid too much attention to it. No idea that there was another Peach Fett. In fact, Chris Fawcett contacted us after the show to say there is no doubt on the authenticity of the other Peach Fett. So one of the big things that we were talking about in the previous show was the actual colour. So I sent you some photos, and there were a lot of recent first shots coming out of Hong Kong, coming out of China, with peach and black colouring.
Yeah.
So to me, that was like a big red flag.
Yeah.
These are being churned out in recent years in those colours. What's to stop someone? I mean, clearly they would have to get the mould, and they would go into specifics. I don't know how that would work, but potentially someone could be casting these in modern plastics in old molds, having no idea that this is it. We did discuss the clear aging actually of that, because you can see that sort of patination in his head, and it was not sure on this. Having now looked at the videos, and actually rather embarrassingly, one of them, Chris Georgioulias from Celebration Europe this year, where I was at, didn't sit through the Rocket Pet talk. But having seen that, and Chris is talking about that photo, talks about the Peach Fett. Brian's talk is fantastic, that video, because I do think we will plug your website because people need to see those videos. So what's the address of your website?
It's peachfett.com.
Yeah. Go to that. Look at particularly Brian's video. It's fantastic. It's really interesting, and there is.
I'd have to say that. I have spoken to quite a few people, and I've only had a very brief conversation with Brian. But having watched his videos, having spoken to him briefly, I think that guy knows pretty much everything there is to know about prototype Fetts. I have pretty much no doubt that Brian knows his shit. There is no doubt in my mind about that. Absolutely,
he's got amazing collection.
Yeah,
he does know his stuff, and I think one of my reasons for sort of being confused, I think is probably the best way of putting it, because they're also described as head pulls. And the only head pulls not the only ones, but the majority of head pulls I'd seen before were these largely cast in this clear, translucent plastic. There's lots of those. There are others. If you go into the collector's archive, Star Wars Collector's Archive, there's a Lando in almost production colours as a head pull, Jedi period. Now, in Brian's video, he talks about that these are most likely setting up a new factory. So these so the bolts, certainly the Peach parts. We've got Ben Kenobi, we've got Boba Fett, we've got Han Bespin. They all date from around 81, probably the same batch, and they're testing out the new molds. The head pull thing was interesting. Could well be head pulls. And you said there's potentially some sort of some things on some of the heads.
On the on one of the Han Bespins, I would not commit to saying that you could tell either way whether it's from testing or just playwear.
Yeah.
But on one of the Fetts with the Peach head, there is a definite, you can see it on the website, that I think it's Fett A, the top of the rocket is completely cut off. And there's like a very sharp indentation into the back of the shoulder as well, which doesn't look like, to me, it doesn't look like someone's taken a hacksaw. It certainly hasn't been snapped off. It's been cut with something really sharp. But that's the only evidence I can see of any testing on any of the figures. Now, I think, I probably should preface this, or I should have prefaced this beforehand by saying that I'm no expert in plastic production. I've got a lot of respect for the guys who go really deep into the weeds on this, but it's not been something that's ever interested me, the whole production process itself. So in that respect, I think perhaps some of my terminology on the website might be incorrect. I think is there a difference between a head pull and what might be called a first shot head or a test shot? Quite possibly. I really don't know enough about the sort of production process and what the correct terminology is. I'm pretty much going on what other people have told me. Now, for example, with the first shots, the non-production figures, the sort of like, for example, the B-Wing pilot, Tebow, that sort of stuff. The first people that I had look at those clearly labelled them as first shots. Now, I've since spoken to people who would much rather call them either non-production or pre-production rather than first shots. So there's this like, well, okay, there's going to be a debate about it.
And you're not, and I'm the wrong person to shed light. I mean, it's good you mentioning that, because I did looking into this. I've learned quite a lot just from going on the Collector's Archive. So this is sort of brand new knowledge to me, sort of 2 days ago.
Yeah.
Looking on the Collector's Archive, head pulls only exist from Empire Strikes Back onwards.
Yeah, right.
Because prior to that, the Star Wars figures, the heads are made differently. So they have the peg on the head that sits in the body, which Ben Kenobi clearly has. And I've always wondered this, you don't see head pulls earlier than Empire figures. Whilst the Empire and Jedi figures, the heads sit on a peg on the body. Yeah. And the idea is, if a kid plays with that roughly, is the head going to snap off? So they do these tests. Now, from watching those videos, hearing Brian talk, there's no reason that, I mean, I think essentially you could, no doubt about it, a bunch of Peach parts are first shots. They're testing those molds with any colours they come out. Now, what they then use those parts for is anyone's there's not science to it. If someone's made up a first shot and want to see if the head's going to snap off, they're going to see if the head's going to snap off, aren't they? So how it's labelled, I suppose, is almost semantics in that.
Well, it is semantics, but I've been thinking about this a lot since we've spoken. And yes, it is semantics, but it's important to the community. That's probably that's probably the key thing, is that someone could say, well, that's definitely not a first shot, or that's definitely not a head pull. It's something else. Now that purely will come down to my either misunderstanding or misquoting someone, or thinking, how am I going to get that to fit on the website menu pull down thing? So, I mean, maybe I should just call them Fett, Kenobi, Han. I don't know. I think in general, what will probably happen is the community will come to a consensus of that should be labelled as such. And I'm quite happy with that. I think if there's a solid reason for me to rename anything on the website or change any of the descriptions based on someone else's superior knowledge, I'm quite happy to do that. I'd rather it was accurate and with the most up-to-date information that is, accepted by the community, rather than, stuff that I've heard from different people. So
I do think with those Peach parts, you're safe calling those first shots. That whatever they were then used for, that they may well be stuff someone might be able to say, but as a baseline, they are non-production colours coming out of those molds, presumably to test the molds. That's their primary function. And I think, not as a non-expert, I would be happy calling those. We'll come on to your other first shots in a bit, but we've talked about the Fett. You've not cleaned it. You've made that point on the website.
Well, again, it's one of those. Pretty much right from the off, everyone who saw the pictures of the figures, basically said, don't clean it. I mean, that was my inclination anyway, from being a fossil collector. You just definitely don't clean anything until you know what you've got and you know what you're doing. And I think, the trouble is with me, I really do want to clean them, but I'm not going to do it. I've been told, leave it to when the grading process happens. So I won't clean them.
I think that's wise. So we've also, so I mentioned Ben Kenobi.
Yeah.
So you've got a production Ben Kenobi body with a peach head. Is that just one of those? Is that?
Yes. Yeah.
And in Uncle Alan's bucket or Daisy's bucket, was that when Alan bought these? does he remember whether it was a bunch of loose parts that he's put together, or?
No, I haven't asked that question. I can do. Personally, I would doubt it very much. It's a good question. I can put it to.
Yeah. I mean, you said he sort of bought them as figures, so you'd assume if he's buying them for his niece, he's unlikely to be buying loose heads.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought so.
It's a broken toy, yeah. So I assume, that they were being, if they are the kind of it's not quite like a factory shop, is it? But it's a similar vein. That presumably, if they are putting these things together to see how they work, they're going to have production bodies to put them. So as you've made the point, they've then been played with, haven't you? How do you say whether what's where from?
Yeah.
From testing.
And to be fair to Daisy, most of the figures are in pretty good condition. It doesn't look like they've been stamped on or thrown around too much. But any sort of cosmetic damage other than the one that I mentioned, the Fett with the rocket cut off, I don't think you could say for definite that there's any testing you can't say for definite whether it's testing or played with. There's just no way. No way.
Yeah. And you've also got, is it one hand Bespin or two? Three.
Yeah.
And we've got one with different colour arms and torso.
They're all the same.
Okay.
They've all got non-production arms, non-production torso, and non-production head. So non-production, when I say non-production colour. So with production legs.
And they've got, I should have your website open in front of me, really, shouldn't I? They've got white arms, remember that. And they've got black bodies.
Black torsos, yeah.
And then the peach.
Yeah. Yeah. So, again, I think when I've shown these figures to people, I've heard about 3 or 4 theories as to what they actually are, and they sound really plausible. But to me, they are just theories. Mm-hmm. And I don't think there's any way you can prove one, unless you were on the factory floor in Hong Kong in 1981, why they were actually put together the way they are. I've got a lot of respect for the guys who go into a lot of detail and understand the manufacturing process and understand the testing processes, all that sort of thing. I've got a lot of time and respect for people who get into that. But I don't see how anything, I wouldn't feel comfortable backing a theory I couldn't prove, put it that way.
Well, it's interesting. Star Wars is unlike any other hobby. You had Action Men, young guys still collect Action Men. I got the odd Action Man prototype. They are a fraction of cost of Star Wars, but they're still the same principle. This is stuff that someone mocked up to make a toy, and then by and large were bin. It doesn't mean anything at that time. And I was thinking this before. You wonder how many other daisies are out there. Who else has got bins full of this stuff? Because these first shots are produced in some quantity. They run that plastic.
Well, you'd imagine so. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. It's weird. I know I've put on the website. There's only 4 of these Fetts with the peach heads known to date. There could be a bucket of 100 out there somewhere. You just don't know.
You've doubled them, haven't you?
Yeah, there's just no way of knowing that. It's but yeah, it's. I'm at the risk of repeating myself. I don't know enough about the production process to back any one person's theory. But like I said, a lot of what I've heard from people sounds plausible as far as plastic manufacturing goes. So, I can only really take people's word. I think that's why I tried on the website not to go into too much detail of what I think they are, because what I think they are doesn't really matter. And it would be pure speculation, and it really serves no purpose. So yeah, that's
Now, being as devil's advocate, I mentioned the more recent peach body parts. Is it feasible that Alan or someone else has picked up more recent stuff? I mean, looking at the bucket, it's just vintage figures. So, but is it feasible that someone's added something more recently to it? I mean, I will also caveat with the fact that your stuff looks very aged, while all those modern prototypes are pristine. That's clear.
Yeah. Well, like I said to you in the week, I think anything is possible. Let's not rule anything out. What I would say about the prototypes that you showed me, I mean, my first question would be, are there any prototypes that came out in the 90s using the vintage figure molds? If we could find them, then I'd be more inclined to investigate that.
Well, see, and I'm not. My understanding was all the molds are destroyed. So when there was the classic collection, they did the first four figures. They did four figures with Han, Luke. I can't remember who the other was. Leia. They're all smaller than the vintage figures because they made the molds off the vintage figures rather than reusing the vintage molds. Unlike the vehicles, which were made with the same mold. So
just so we're clear, you're talking about that four. Are you talking about that 4-pack that came out? Right. Okay. Yeah.
So although they look on the face of it identical to the vintage figures, they're not.
Smaller.
They're slightly because you're making a mold from the figure rather than from a hard copy. So the scale just slightly out. Yeah. So it would be fairly easy to see your Peach Fett next to a production Boba Fett if they're exactly the same size.
Yeah.
And that's not how it's created. That's
that's
easy.
A good point. Yeah,
that's very easy to roll out.
They didn't. That 4-pack that came out, that was just Han, Chewie, Leia, and Luke. I think
it is certainly Han, Leia, and Luke. I remember it must have been. It was Chewie because I always wanted one. Actually, I never bought one at the time.
Look, honestly, I'm open to any possibility. If there was a Fett which was made in that line, and there were some images of a Fett in the same colorway as the prototypes that you sent me, I might be more inclined to follow it up. But I think it's a reach. For me, the evidence isn't really there. And the reason I say that, I'm not just saying that just to dismiss it out of hand, but the reason I say that is when you compare this Peach Fett with the one that's on Brian's website, it's pretty clear it's the same figure. Or not, it's not exactly the same. There are slight differences. But the other thing that has sort of encouraged me is that the offers that have come in for the Peach Fett, three of the offers that have come in from the Peach Fett have come from members of the community, which wouldn't be making those offers if it wasn't authentic. One of the offers came in from someone I'd never heard of before, and it never really got that far. But regardless, there's been 3 very decent offers for the Peach Fett, which, if it wasn't real, they wouldn't be making those offers.
Yeah, well, I think that's a fair point. I've actually just thought of something. I am convinced. I'm not. But I don't know what the retro figures, how they were made. So the ones on the, are they?
Yeah.
Thinking they are.
Well, they've got different markings on it, haven't they? They've got different COO, and I don't know.
Yeah,
I've had some, but I don't think I've ever opened them, so I don't.
There are differences in them again, but just throwing that out there. But I suppose that's a good question because again, you've told me that the cost of grading, the time, you're not interested, or Alan's not interested. I suppose sending them off to Tom Darby, I know it's not AFA, it's his other firm, I never remember, Collector Grading Authority, something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know, probably terrible.
CIB.
Something like that. That would clear up doubt for. I mean, it's point in a way, it doesn't really matter whether I believe it or not, because I'm not in a situation to ever be buying one. But so those big hitters, if there was that certainty from the likes of Tom Darby, I assume Alan would be able to add a bit of cash on whatever that final value is.
Yeah, well, I mean, so the reason they haven't been graded yet and potentially won't be graded until the end of this year is basically practical. I mean, we've spoken about this during the week, but so based on the financial offers that Alan's had for this collection and for individual figures, he won't have them put in the post. That limits my options. I've then got the option of grading in this country and paying for a rapid turnaround service. I'm not going to mention names, but everyone knows there's only one grading company in this country, and it's unlikely I'm going to be able to come in, get my peach Fett graded, and leave at the end of the day.
I'd also say that would those big hitters be convinced if it was graded by a UK company? Yeah, I think.
I mean, the issue. I mean, I can tell you that I've contacted 2 auction houses. One auction house. Have you seen Netflix? What's it called? King of Collectibles. Goldin. It's a new auction. It's a relatively new auction house. Check out King of Collectibles on Netflix.
I will. Yeah, I love all that stuff. I will do. Yeah.
I mean, they mainly do basketball memorabilia. They mainly do sports cards, stuff like that. They're not really. They're trying to move into Star Wars collectibles. But anyway, I had a good chat with these guys. They wanted to consign the whole collection. They obviously wanted it all graded, which is fine. But they wouldn't offer anything other than AFA or CAS, of which, if you're pitching to a global market, totally understandable. So the grading in this country, well, it might be okay for the first shots and stuff like that. The grading's not my thing, so I don't know. I don't know whether actually grading a first shot is going to put that much more value on it. They're not really big ticket items, but certainly any of the other figures just can't do it in this country.
No, I think that's fair enough. And actually, in retrospect, how does Daisy feel having brought them over wrapped up in fruit bags?
Well, when we got to Reading Services and she pulled them out of the bag, what are you doing? And we'd literally sat down. Our flight didn't get in till about 10 o'clock at night, so it was quite late. And we were sat in Reading Services, and I got the peach Fett out, and I was sweating. I've got to be honest, I was sweating. I sat there holding this Fett, which had been wrapped up in fruit protective stuff, stuffed in the bottom of a rucksack. So I don't think she realised up until that point the significance of it. She wasn't really paying attention.
Well, childhood toys,
Well, yeah, she'd probably thrown them all around the flat when she was a kid and didn't really think about it. But anyway, just to finish off on grading and why they haven't been graded yet and why it will take a while to get them graded is my options. If you take the UK grading out of the equation, are flying them out to the States, because again, you won't let them go in the post. And to be fair, I think that's not unreasonable. I think if they were my property, I probably would fly out. I don't think I'd put them in the post.
I don't know if you're aware, but there's I think it's a 12-baht layer that's got delivered to the wrong address by UPS just this week. It's on one of the Facebook groups.
Right.
And I remember in the past there was a sort of one-off Jawa card that disappeared. I think if they were mine, I would be flying them out myself as well.
And that in itself is going to involve quite a lot of cost. If you put me on a flight to the States, you got to then pay for a rapid turnaround for authentication and grading. You also got to pay for my accommodation and food and my flight back. And you're talking quite a significant cash outlay up front with that. Plus the fact I'm just a normal guy. I've got a job. My holiday's booked for this year. Me flying out to the States to get some figures graded is not going to happen. Probably not this year. Probably be 2025 if we do that. So it was really a case of, I would love to get them graded because there would be no question then. There would be no problem. And you're right, you could probably get more of a premium for them. But on the other hand, there's an opportunity for collectors to get hold of these before they get graded and do what they want with them.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of people who, I'm not so sure about the bigger ticket items like the Peach Fett and stuff like that. I think that's going to have to be graded to be sold. But, without putting my salesman hat on too much, you're probably going to be paying a lot more once it is graded. So, there is an opportunity to get it while it's not. It is a tricky one.
Well, we've mentioned the first shots, the first shot figures. So in time for let's talk about those for a bit. Yeah. So they aren't peach coloured. They look like sort of production type figures. Could you explain what you've got there?
Yeah, so these figures, I think there was probably only 3 that jumped out to me straight away. There was the Emperor, which had no markings on whatsoever. Same with the ATST, and Tebow obviously looked weird. There was the head gear wasn't painted. So those 3 figures I looked at to start with and thought, I didn't really know what they were, but they didn't look right to me. And it was only when I started going through the figures with one person in particular, there was one particular afternoon where it was just show me give me detailed photos of these figures as you're going through them. And it was basically coming back with first shot, first shot, first shot, first shot, first shot. I'd never collected first shots before. I didn't know. I'm not a big COO guy either. I don't really get into collecting variants. And, when you do actually look at figures like the B-Wing and probably Preen Face in particular, you look at those figures and they look, you could say, they look like production figures. But then when you actually look at the colour of the paint, is very slightly different. Obviously, the COO markings. I found variant villain so helpful. Any guys that use that on a regular basis, and I think it's become a lot more utilised by the community in general, especially on Echo. Everyone's saying, go use variant villain, go use it. Well, also, guys, go and drop them a couple of quid in PayPal. They do a lot of work for the community, and they've sort of taken over the mantle from
Imperial Gunnery.
Gunnery, yeah. So anyway, I spent an awful lot of time on there checking figures, and you're looking at these figures, and I can't I can't find another figure with these COO markings. For example, the Leah Endor. For all intents and purposes, you look at it, it's just there's obviously nothing. It's got no poncho, no hat, no weapon, no belt. It's just a bare ass figure. But the COO marking, nowhere to be. Well, there is a COO marking on it, but if you check it against any other known Leia variant, it's one of a kind. I haven't seen this before. And then this is where it got kind of interesting for me in terminology. Then you go to check with other people, A, could you help me out with a valuation on these? And B, are they what I think they are? Yes, they are. But some people won't call them first shots. They're more interested, or they're more inclined to say they're pre-production. So again, the terminology might be something that needs changing on those. It might be.
So what's their argument there? Because from when I saw those photos, the Emperor was really clear, no coup on that. And I know there are. I think it's a couple of Ewoks that do have, that I'm aware of, that have coups that are known as first shots. But generally, a first shot doesn't have a coup. So that was the question for you: is why are these first shots? You explained that beautifully. Yeah. The coups are unique. Yeah. So for the people saying that they're not first shots, they're pre-production figures, what's the idea then? I
think again that possibly comes down to semantics, or it's just it depends on your view, doesn't it? And your understanding, or one's understanding, of the production process. So you might say that a first shot is that's my understanding of the first shot, and this might be wrong, is that it is the first figure out of the mold, or one of the first figures out of the mold, which is, as close as damn it to production standard.
It's to test that
before it gets any of the markings removed.
Yeah.
So is it accurate to call it a first shot, or is it accurate to call it a pre-production figure? Is it both?
Well, I think it can be, because the thing with first shots, they are first shots for that mold. So you've got distinctions, haven't you? You've got the very first figures off the very first mold that I, again, assume got no markings on whatsoever. But a mold that's third generation, you've worn out 2, or you go into another factory, but you know what your copyright information is going to be. That is why you get some first shots with coups on it, I would assume. So yours to have these unique coups, I assume there's been some tweak. So they've come off. I mean, yeah, you're right. What is, the pre-production figure first shot? There's engineering pilots, which I never really understood. So.
Well, that comes back to the Peach Fett, doesn't it? I mean, that's. I mean, if you read the letter from the Kenner employee that comes with the Fett that's on Brian's site, they term the Peach Fett as both an engineering pilot and a first shot. So even Kenner employees are kind of, what is it? Is it one or the other? Yeah. Why does it need to be both? That's probably beyond my understanding, and I think you could argue until the cows come home.
Might have to get Brian or someone on to kind of give a proper explanation of all these.
I think he does give a very good explanation on the video he does with the one of the links off the website. Anyway, he does a pretty good job of describing what his understanding of engineer pilot versus first shot is. So
what's the video that Brian discusses it on?
That is on a discussion about the rocket firing Fett, and I believe it's the Collectors Alliance. It's a YouTube link on the website.
So it's definitely worth looking at that. It's a very interesting
absolutely.
video.
Yeah.
And I think sort of final point. Yeah, I mean, this is really interesting. It is an amazing find, and being from the UK, I do like it when we have good finds over here. They're quite few and far between. There's Dave Tree's proof sheets sausage wrap from a few years ago. I know Paul and Co have been over to the States with their find recently, so it's lovely that you've now had this one. Now you are keeping one item of this collection, isn't it? And that's and it's the Emperor. Why have you gone for the Emperor?
Well, it was probably I said Yoda was my favourite figure as a kid, and I think the Emperor was probably a close second because he's like the ultimate baddie. I know Vader is the badass baddie, but Yoda and the Emperor were like the ultimate, really, weren't they? And the Emperor, getting the Emperor as a kid, I got him as a mail away. It's always been a figure I quite. He's creepy, and then Alan just said, as part of your commission, you can keep one of the first shots. I was like, I'm having the Emperor, and it'll be the centerpiece of a little Emperor focus, I think.
Yeah, I think that's great, and also he's in far more films than Vader, isn't he? Now, is he in all but two?
Yeah, he is. Yeah, and I always found. I mean, this is sort of digressing slightly, but Vader figure you get into the aesthetics of things. He's got skinny little legs, skinny little arms. He doesn't look badass as a figure. I mean, he's obviously badass in the film, but figure never did it for me.
No, it's always a wonder that they never redid him, isn't it? I love it. It's so iconic of the 70s, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, when you were a kid, getting Vader with the saber. It's awesome. I don't know whether your appreciation of things changes when you get older, but you look at some of the figures now, and I said Lobot was my worst figure earlier, but I think running that a close second is Big Head Han. I hate that figure. It looks like Mr. Mackey off South Park. Why did they change that?
Yeah, I don't.
It's
change it to make it worse. Yeah. It's bizarre, isn't it? I've never really understood that. And then it's an odd one. Well, I really appreciate your time, Neil.
Fantastic story. Thank you.
I hope to see you at the next Echo Live, or even better, Japan. That'd be excellent. Yeah. And good luck with wherever Peach Fett takes you. I'll be watching the website with interest to see what updates there are, and nice one.
It's been great. Thanks very much, Andrew.
Thank you.